educator, and community advocate, Taina Asili. Taina is a New York-based Puerto Rican singer, songwriter, band leader, carrying on the tradition of her ancestors, fusing past and present struggles into one soulful and defiant voice. Residing in Albany, New York, Taina Asili performs her social justice songs as a solo artist and also with her dynamic 8-piece band, bringing love, resistance, and ancestral remembrance to venues, festivals, and conferences and political events across the globe. Taina Asili's voice exudes strength of spirit, filling listeners with the fervor for freedom and inspiring audiences to dance to the rhythm of rebellion. Billboard magazine featured Taina in a list of 11 songs of protest and resistance by Latino artists. And the Huffington Post named her as #2 in the list of 12 freedom-fighting bands to get you through the Trump years. Please join me in welcoming Taina Asili to the 2019 Conference on Racial and Social Justice.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Buenos dias. How many of you know what a good Puerto Rican sofrito is? My Boricuas. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, for us Boricuas, the sofrito is that special sauce that we use in our Puerto Rican cooking. Infused into our beans, it's a potent mixture of powerful ingredients. The cilantro, the culantro, the onions, the garlic, the ajecito, and whatever special recipes your abuela has. These potent ingredients, when blended together, make a powerful mixture. My grandmother, my abuelita Gloria, would bring us her sofrito to upstate New York where we lived. And when I would open up that tub and I would smell that sofrito, I would remember who I am and where I come from. And I believe it's so important for us to remember who we are and where we come from so that we can know where we need to go. En lo más profundo de mi memoria vive un sabor de otro día. Es el olor de mi fuerte ascendencia. En las sabias manos de mi abuelita. donde voy. Ahora, my abuelita sofrito. There it is. So as I said, my abuelita would bring us her sofrito. Now my grandmother grew up in Barranquitas in Puerto Rico, in a country that is colonized still by the United States. And with that came the consequence of extreme poverty. And so my grandmother, her dream was to go to school. She really wanted that opportunity to have an education. And so what she did was, out of the 11 children, she decided to be the one that would come to the United States at the age of 16 on a boat. And her dream was to be able to go to school. My grandmother was not able to fulfill that dream. But what she did do was work in education as an assistant in an inner city classroom in the Lower East Side for many, many years. And through that, she was able to satiate that desire that she had to be educated and be a part of a school system. And with that, she also saved every penny that she could, so that my parents would have the opportunity, my mother would have the opportunity to have an education and go to college. And she did. So give it up to Abuelita Gloria and all of the grandmothers and grandfathers and elders and ancestors that have brought us to this moment. I'm going to speak a bit at the beginning of my talk about my ancestors, because as I said, it's so important to remember how we got into this place, how we got to this moment. So, my parents grew up in New York City. My mother grew up in the Lower East Side. My father grew up in East Harlem. And during their time, we had a lot of powerful social movements happening in the 1970s, no?
Yes, yes.
Right? So my parents were inspired by the Young Lords, the Black Panthers. My father used to see Malcolm X speak on his block. And they were inspired, like many were at that time, especially as young people, as students, to rise up. So through affirmative action programs, my father, through an affirmative action program that actually brought him straight from prison to a college in upstate New York, my mother, through another affirmative action program, they landed at Binghamton University. At Binghamton University, where they founded the Latin American Student Union. So the person next to the conga drums, that's my father. And my parents were a part of a powerful movement of students across the nation. You know, when I go and I speak at colleges and universities these days, I ask the students, so how did you start your organization? Say it's a Latin American Student Union. How did you start this organization? They'll usually say, well, we went to a student association and we signed a paper. And I said, the way my parents started a student organization back in the day was through sit-ins and protests against a community, against a country, against a world that feared the idea of Latinx people coming together in education, coming together in cultural celebration, coming together to support one another as they did. Students died. Students were arrested. Students gave their lives, as my parents did. And through this work, as you can see in this image, not only were they working within their community, but in this picture right here, they're actually doing international solidarity work. Now, as many people remember the popular social movements of those times, we see the pictures of them in the streets protesting, but we don't often see the service work and the popular education work that was also happening at that time. And that was the work that my parents were inspired by. There's also another important piece to this picture, and it's those two conga drums. Because music, culture, and the arts have always been with us on this journey. So, I'd like to introduce you to my mother. This is my mother, Mimi, who is a beautiful bomba dancer. So my parents were also the keepers of a Puerto Rican folkloric tradition that descends from our African and Taino ancestors, called bomba. Now, bomba was used during a time when our people were enslaved as a way to reclaim our humanity in the face of inhumanity, as a way to reclaim our cultural and spiritual traditions. And also, during these bombazos, this was an important time where we would organize slave revolts. We would organize and rise up together. This art form was passed on from century to century to century, lasting to this day. So my parents were keepers of this, and they understood that part of their education work and part of their reclamation work was continuing that art and resistance work through the maintaining of our cultural arts and traditions. This work continues to live on. This right here is a video of people doing bomba in Puerto Rico. And if we can get the audio on there, we'll be able to hear. This is in about 4 months after Hurricanes Maria and Irma hit the island of Puerto Rico. And we still have people practicing bomba when there was no electricity, when there was no running water, when there was no access to medicines and food. People still had the bomba, these cultural arts, these rhythms, these spiritual practices to help us to rise up, to help us to remember who we are and where we come from, to help us to reclaim our joy. So this is a powerful part of my lineage. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my tech person here. What am I saying here? So this is an important part of my lineage that my parents passed on to me, and that's me. So this is my gift, my journey that they had handed off to me. But during my time, my era of education, I grew up in upstate New York, and I had to deal with a lot of racism, sexism, and homophobia within my school system. I was one of a small handful of kids of color in my school system. And so what I was dealing with was a little bit different than what my parents were dealing with during their era, just a different experience. And also the social movements that were happening at that time were very different. So many of those folks, those Black Panthers, those Young Lords, the American Indian movement, many of those folks were, and some are still, incarcerated and behind bars as political prisoners in the United States. And so what I was a part of was the movement to free these political prisoners. Also, as a daughter and sister of two formerly incarcerated Black men, I wanted to be a part of a movement that was working to end mass incarceration. So this became my politicization. I also grew up in a time where the WTO and the work against the anti-globalization movements were working strong. So my protest looked a bit different than my parents' protests. And that's me in the streets. And my music looked a little bit different than my parents' generation. So this is me singing in a punk rock band as a teenager. We got anybody lovers of punk rock in the house? Okay. So for 8 years, I sang in this band, singing songs of rage and resistance, and became a part of a musical movement, understanding this connection between music and social change in a very different way than my parents' generation. But I also was missing something, because I wasn't looking back. I wasn't looking back at those seeds, at those gifts, at that lineage. And it was only when my parents passed away, and my grandparents passed away, and I was now a mother, that I really realized how precious these seeds that they had given me were. And I wanted to figure out a way to use these seeds, to use these precious gifts that they had given me, this lineage, in a way that would be most authentic to myself, that would weave our African and Taino folkloric traditions of resistance, that would weave in that history, that would also bring in the punk rock rebellion that I had cultivated in my youth. And so I started to work on a new project, which is the work that I do today. You got a little snippet of it already. And I just want to see if my tech people can help me with this audio. This is a music video that I put out. It's called Freedom. And it's a music video that I put out about mass incarceration. So I've been working with, as I said, movements to free political prisoners for many years. I also co-founded the New York State Prisoner Justice Network in upstate New York, as well as Capital Area Against Mass Incarceration. So what I do today is I weave that music that I was raised with into my music. And I also bring in the social movements that have inspired me, that I'm a part of, into my work. So, it's not working now? So this is a video that I created in upstate New York that actually has activists from my community in it. Unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to hear it today, but don't worry, I'll sing some more for you in a little bit. I also, reference the Underground Railroad in this video. So Albany was an important stop on the Underground Railroad. And one of the things that I wanted to share with my listeners, shares with those that follow my music and follow my work, is this idea that not only, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we're not just talking about this movement as something that has started today, but I wanted to help us to weave that thread of that legacy, that lineage of resistance. And so through this, I created this music video that I now bring with me to colleges and high schools and middle schools and after-school programs to open up a dialogue about mass incarceration. And it's really amazing to me how people, especially young people, are able to connect with this type of media. So, I could speak to folks and have like a slideshow with, facts and statistics about mass incarceration, but music has an ability to impact us in a way that no other art form can. It really affects us on a physical level. And bringing in the visuals is also really important. So I found that it's a very powerful tool for me to be able to share with young people. I've also been involved in a lot of work around climate change. So I've created music videos and songs about climate change. I showed a slide a little bit ago of referencing a protest in Vieques, Puerto Rico, about the bombing of Vieques, Puerto Rico by the US Navy. So I came up during the ending of the stages of that movement that were moving strong already. And I was inspired by those who would literally sit down in the bombing ranges in Vieques, Puerto Rico and occupy space, really literally putting their lives on the line to protect our earth, to protect our people. And I wanted to create a piece of work that represented this idea of people putting ourselves, our bodies on the line, putting our whole selves into this work to end climate change and violence to our environment, to our earth, and to our people. This is a music video that I put out right after the election of Trump in 2017. It is No es mi presidente. And I wish you could hear it, but this music video to me was important because as I was traveling to a lot of colleges and universities and high schools, I would hear a lot of feelings of despair and fear. And I, again, wanted to remind us that what we are encountering, what we are facing today is not something that we are alone in, that our ancestors have our back, that we come from a powerful lineage of resistance. And so with that, okay. And so with that, I wanted to let people know that we have this powerful lineage. So I created this video, No es mi presidente, which features activists from my community, some who are well known, like Barbara Smith. Anybody know Barbara Smith? Black lesbian activist Barbara Smith, Naomi Jaffe, as well as other activists from my community. The problem with this video, or the challenge with this video, is that though it's beautiful and inspiring in many ways, and it was an important offering to protest music of this time, I believe. It also did not allow people to get to know who these folks were in the ways that I really wanted to. So my newest project has been using my music as a way to lift up other people's voices and stories. This is me, some of the ways that I use my work today, singing these songs at protests, demonstrations, events, using my work to organize with other artists, national campaigns. This was a campaign to stop Rock Against the TPP tour, where we worked we were the largest movement to end the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. We were the largest movement that worked against that, and we won. Thank you. I'm watching the time here. I bring my work, as I said, to colleges, universities, high schools. I teach songwriting for social change. I use these videos, these tools to have these conversations. But as I said, part of the challenge with these videos, these stories, is that I didn't allow people to have a deeper look and to really see what was the story behind the song. My newest project is called Resiliencia. And what I'm doing is I interviewed women of color about their stories of resilience throughout the United States, Puerto Rico, and Canada. And from their stories, I've composed songs and a documentary series that I've been releasing throughout the year. And these stories to me are really interesting because they are a wide spectrum of stories, from folks sharing their stories of migration to surviving breast cancer, to surviving sexual assault and abuse, to surviving hurricanes Irma, Maria, and colonialism. So what I've been doing is taking these stories and lifting them up in my music. Now, this is a clip of the documentary that I released about hurricanes Irma, Maria. I'm running out of time here, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what I'm doing. So this work is a fusion of music video and documentary. And this is an organization that I work with called Soul Fire Farm, which is a food justice farm in upstate New York. I work with this organization to end racism and injustice in the food system. And to me, this brings back full circle the work of my abuelita holding on to these culinary arts, my abuelita who was basically had to do with forced migration, forced to leave because of poverty. This organization that we do, the work that we do today, is about reconnecting with land, reconnecting with food, reconnecting with health and wellness, doing that popular education work. And to me, this is about, I'm gonna sing it to you. This next song is called Plant the Seed. And this is a song that I wrote about our founder of the organization. Her name is Leah Penniman. And to me, this is really the essence of this work. This is my declaration. To be fully alive, healing. This is my reclamation of my ancestral wisdom. The earth, it's saved for me. And I plant the seed. Don't give up, I won't settle. Till I saw you lifted in my hand, feel His love. No, I won't give up, I won't settle. This is what I'm here to do. Take a path to turn me up to land. Ancestors calling from the depths of the earth. Take a path to turn me up to land. Let it be our medicine. All that we need is in those in that seed, precious memory, and I came to sovereignty. Let me came to sovereignty as I plant that seed. I'm memory, I'm hope, I'm sovereignty. I'm memory, I'm hope, I'm sovereignty. With the harvest of collective let our courage nourish us, let it be have no place. With the harvest of collective we are self-determined.